Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Now, Pope Francis's financial advisor is being charged in Australia with historical sexual assault offences.
Cardinal George Pell is the third highest-ranking official in the Vatican, has been ordered to appear in court in Australia on the 18th of July. Our senior news correspondent Lisa Holland reports.
Cardinal George Pell is the highest-ranking Vatican official to be charged in the Catholic Church's long-running sexual abuse scandal. The Pope has granted him leave of absence to return to Australia to defend himself. Speaking in Rome, he said he was looking forward to having his day in court.
All along, I have been completely consistent and clear in my total rejection of these allegations. News of these charges strengthens my resolve, and court proceedings now offer me an opportunity to clear my name.
Cardinal Pell is facing multiple historical sexual assault charges in Australia.
People had a different attitude to them.
This was him last year giving evidence to an Australian commission into institutional child sexual abuse. He spoke via video link from Rome, saying he was too ill to travel. The allegations against the Vatican treasurer put an awkward spotlight once again on the Catholic Church and Pope Francis's handling of abuse allegations.
The Holy See expresses its respect for the Australian justice system, which will have to decide the merits of the questions raised. At the same time, it is important to recall that Cardinal Pell has openly and repeatedly condemned as immoral and intolerable the acts of abuse committed against minors.
The Cardinal is a former Archbishop of Sydney and Melbourne. Seen as a hardliner with no tolerance for homosexuality, he once said this about the country's famous gay and lesbian Mardi Gras parade.
Won't be sponsoring a float.
He was against women in the priesthood, but denied making this claim.
To ordain a woman would be like ordaining a potato.
The investigation into Cardinal Pell has been ongoing for several years. His alleged victims have welcomed the charges.
I just want him to come back and look me in the eye.
The 76-year-old has been ordered to appear before magistrates in Melbourne on July the 18th. Lisa Holland, Sky News.
One of the Pope's closest advisers, Cardinal George Pell, has been charged with historical sexual offences against children. At a press conference this morning, the Cardinal insisted he was innocent and said he looked forward to having his day in court. James Reynolds reports from Rome.
This morning in St Peter's Square, the cardinals of the Catholic Church turned out for a celebration led by Pope Francis. What these men do, how they behave, directly affects the Pope's ability to lead. This morning, one of their number was missing. Cardinal George Pell appeared instead in a Vatican press room to respond to the allegations made in Australia.
I'm innocent of these charges. They are false. The whole idea of sexual abuse is abhorrent to me.
For more than 40 years, George Pell worked as a priest and then an archbishop in his own country. During the 1970s, he worked in his hometown of Ballarat.
Today, Victoria Police have charged Cardinal George Pell.
The police have been investigating this era, and they've now brought charges.
Cardinal Pell is facing multiple charges in respect to historic sexual offences, and there are multiple complainants relating to those charges.
This isn't the first time the cardinals had to answer questions about his actions. In February last year, George Pell testified via video link to an Australian Royal Commission on child abuse. Australian victims flew in to watch his testimony. Other abuse survivors say that the Pope himself must now take wider steps.
He's very good at sound bites and saying the right things at the right time. But for me, and I know for many other survivors and victims, it's not about sound bites and public relations. It's about action. And on action, the Church is still dismally slow and way behind the curve in terms of what they should be doing to deal with the crisis that exists within that institution.
Pope Francis has called George Pell dedicated and honest. Now, a court in Australia must decide if that is so. James Reynolds, BBC News, Rome.
Now, the Vatican's third highest-ranking official has been charged with a series of sex offences in Australia after a lengthy investigation. Cardinal George Pell strongly denied any wrongdoing, claiming he'd been the victim of relentless character assassination. Police in the state of Victoria say they decided to bring charges after multiple complainants came forward. Cardinal Pell, who is Australia's most senior Catholic cleric, has been given a leave of absence by the Pope to fight the charges, as Jonathan Miller reports.
This is 9 News with Peter Overton.
Good evening. The Catholic Church is tonight in crisis. Its most senior member in Australia, Cardinal George Pell, charged with historical sex offences. Victorian police today revealed...
Long accused of protecting paedophile priests, Australia's most senior prelate now faces as yet unspecified sex abuse charges himself.
Cardinal Pell is facing multiple charges in respect to historic sexual offences, and there are multiple complainants relating to those charges.
Last year, the former Archbishop of Melbourne and Sydney, who's now one of the Pope's top advisors, testified to a royal commission investigating child sex abuse. The commission found shocking levels of abuse by the clergy over decades. Pell, supported by bishops as a man of integrity, conceded institutional errors, but denied any sexual offences himself. News from Australia reached the Vatican overnight, and before dawn on the feast day of Saints Peter and Paul, Cardinal Pell released his first statement, saying he'd return home next month to clear his name. Then, early this morning, he spoke to the press.
I'm looking forward, finally, to having my day in court. I'm innocent of these charges. They are false. The whole idea of sexual abuse is abhorrent to me.
The Cardinal said he had been the victim of relentless character assassination.
E arrivederci.
Pope Francis, who Pell said he'd talked things over with, later presided over Mass in St. Peter's Square. He has promised zero tolerance of sex abuse, but it's regarded by many as the blind spot of the Holy See. Aussies in the square today wanted God's truth to shine through.
Well, there's been a lot of bad press about Pell in the Australian media. He's not very well liked, and a lot of people were very angry that the church in Australia didn't do enough to cover any of the sex abuse for many years.
I think it's a big deal, and I think it's something that needs to be taken quite seriously and not something the church can throw away and kind of sweep under the rug.
Come home, Cardinal Pell, we know you're not feeling well.
A song by musician Tim Minchin, which pleaded with the ailing cardinal to return to Australia to testify to the Royal Commission, went viral last year.
Just do it soon. I hear the tolling of a bell, and it has a Pellian knell. I want to be transparent.
Now Cardinal George Pell, ordained 51 years ago, is coming home to face his accusers. He will appear before Melbourne Magistrates Court on the 18th of July.
Jonathan Miller reporting.
I've been